Welcome to our podcast. This is Take the Lead, Change the Game, a podcast for women leaders looking to deepen their knowledge and skills and find enjoyment in the progress and process. We're powered by Software Leadership. Software Leadership is a cohort-based coaching experience designed to fuel courage and ignite impact among women professionals. I'm Mindy Galati, and I'm here with my co-host, Lindsay Goldford Gray. We are the co-founders of Sofra. Together, we bring a blend of leadership, coaching, strategy, and lived experience to help women navigate challenges, seize opportunities, and lead with confidence. Today, we want to talk about creating spaces for deeper conversation. And when Lindsay and I were talking about this week's podcast, what I've been experiencing this week is leading a leadership team, an executive team through an offsite. You might want to call it a retreat. I call it a strategic alignment session. But wow, it was impactful because we created a space. It was a very intentional space. And I thought it'd be great for Lindsay and I to kind of share what this really means and what this looks like, especially in how busy the world is all the time. And how do we create space and why is it so important? Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, how's it going? You're back, you're tired.
I'm back and tired, but it's been an awesome, productive week, but excited to kind of talk about this given what I have been going through this week.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about sort of what is causing this sort of disconnected space, I mean, we are more connected than ever, right? I mean, we're on chat, we have email, a lot of us are in person in some form or fashion. We have all of these ways to connect with each other, but everything is really rushed and honestly can be quite transactional. I mean, I know as someone who built and ran a remote team, Zoom is not the same as in person, right? You get on and you might say, how are you doing? How's the weather? I mean, very surface level, but by the time everyone joins, it's off to the races. And then the end of the conversation, you don't stand around and chat like you would if you were in person. And so it can feel very, very transactional. And there's a cost to that, right? I mean, it creates misunderstandings. It creates poor decision-making because we're all feeling like, okay, we got to solve the problem. A lack of creativity. Mm-hmm. For some folks, they just disengage, right? Because it's all going so fast. And, a lot of people need some time to process that they're unable to get. And then, of course, it creates shallow trust because we don't have this space and time to communicate care or to really exhibit care for each other. Yeah. And it also creates, lack of belonging because we have not cultivated that. Yeah. And so, all of that is sort of this bigger problem that is inhibiting our work world today.
Yeah. And, Lindsay, even when you were just talking about getting on Zoom and saying hi, how was your weekend? It's interesting because I think we probably all had that experience where you're the only other person on the Zoom. And you do kind of start having a little next level, but then someone pops in and then you're like, oh, I can't. You stop yourself. And so it's even when we try, because humans actually really desire that deeper connection, it's awkward because then someone's head pops in and you're like, do I keep talking about my personal thing or, and so I find it to be much more awkward than when you're in person. And so yeah, I mean, this is the world that we live in. I kind of jokingly, but realistically say to people, I only swim in the deep end, meaning I don't love superficial conversation. I'm the person at the event who's okay, really tell me how you're doing. And let's really explore because that's how I build connection. And I also like a deeper understanding of people that I'm around. And what I have found from a work position is that, there are such better decisions when we don't go fast and when there's a shared understanding. This strategic alignment that I told you, I've led dozens of these sessions and they're usually 2 to 3 days long. And the reason I call them strategic alignment is because we have to be aligned. We have to have a shared understanding and agreement that we're going to do this thing together. And some of it is very consequential to a company. But what I find is really it takes hours to even start getting into it. And part of what you talked about with trust, we need to build this sense of psychological safety, which is really a condition where humans can feel seen and valued and heard, and they feel comfortable in that, and they don't feel like they're going to be punished or misunderstood. And it's super easy to get misunderstood when we go too fast. And I think I want all of us to think about this, because we get done with one Zoom and we go to the next, and then go to the next, and there's no way for our brains to even catch up. And so I think we're all at this deficit of not having space for deep conversations because we've set this world up like this.
Yeah.
Don't you agree, Lindsay?
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that really resonates with me, what you just said about like one Zoom to the other. You know, I do a lot of executive coaching. And on Monday, I had 5 coaching sessions set. And it was okay. In the end, like one actually had to get bumped. And so it went down to only 4. But it's a lot. And I want to make sure that I'm fully present, especially in those sort of like heavier conversations. Mm-hmm. And so we do have to make space and time. You know, 4 is probably the max for me. You know, like probably really needs to be the max. Otherwise, I am not able to be present in the way that I need to be, and in the way that my clients deserve.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what the one thing I'll say, sort of an example of this is, you know, on Monday, we began this leadership alignment session, and it was offsite. It was not at an office. It was in a place where it was comfortable. It was actually at someone's house. And, you know, I think everyone's like, okay, how is this going to go? And I start by stretching, and like, we're going to teach each other our favorite stretches. And then we're going to do, you know, and I have a whole process I use. But it wasn't until like probably 5 hours in that the issue that we all wanted to talk about was able to come up. And it came up organically, which was the whole goal of it. Because if I would have just been like, okay, now we're going to talk about this highly contentious issue. Let's go. And on Zoom, sometimes actually that's what we do.
Yeah, that's how we have to do it.
I'm here on Zoom, and we have 30 minutes to talk about this really egregious thing. Sometimes, you know, as lawyers, we know these are like really consequential legal decisions, or like, you know, is this person going to get fired, or like, so it seems so weird because we need to be in a zone. And so with this group, it was like the thing we really needed to get to. It took a few hours, but when we got there, we had created such a deep and connected space that the conversation was wonderful, because we were connected and we were not rushed, and we still had hours and hours left. And I just like, that's what really I wanted to spend our time on today, is because I just can't emphasize enough. And we don't have the privilege, most of us, of having that space day to day, but how can we create it?
Well, and just acknowledging that it's critical and it's not discretionary.
Yeah.
You know, I know one of the ways in which I have seen this play out is when I was CEO of Ascena, we joined like a multi-organizational collaboration in a moment of humanitarian immigration crisis. So like stuff was moving a mile a minute. Every organization had sort of their piece, and people knew each other to some extent, but like had not, you know, it was cross organization. So like had not worked together on a deep level. And we didn't take enough time. We were all remote. So we didn't take enough time to build that connection. The Zooms were transactional in nature, as most are. And then we weren't able to get together in person until about 6 months into the project. And I will tell you, the project really suffered because we're not able to build that trust from the get-go. And when you're dealing in a moment of crisis, like stuff breaks, it's not going to work from the outset. And so you have to really assume goodwill on the part of your colleagues and really trust. And because we didn't make that space, and I think we would have gotten there if we had done things differently, but because we didn't make that space, it really affected not only like the morale and everybody's personal relationships, but the operational effectiveness of the project itself. Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, I think when we talk about like operational effectiveness, which is like a big word, but most companies and law firms, you know, they're trying to figure out how to be like efficient, how to get things done, you know, how to avoid burnout. And honestly, like some of it is just that creating the space that's needed. And, you know, I'm reminded of, it was, you know, within the last couple of months, but I was on a call with a leader, And I would say it was a coaching call, but it wasn't set as a coaching call, but it was like he wanted me to help him make some strategic decisions. And we got to this point and it just felt like, I mean, he looked overwhelmed. And I said, you know what, like, let's just like kind of pause. Let's just like think about this for a few minutes. Like, let's just think about it. And we were kind of sitting there and it was silent on the Zoom. We were just sitting there. And I was like, let's just think about this. And then I said, you know what? I'd rather like go outside. Can I call you? And he said, yes. And we walked outside of our offices and I just needed to be in the sun. He needed to be outside. And then we just talked, but we were far apart, 1,000 miles away, but we knew we needed a different connection. We actually knew we needed space. And the space we needed was to stop talking and just process and just think. And then we went outside and then we were pretty silent. And I think people get really uncomfortable with silence, but it was like in that moment. And then we were able to work through it. But I think it really feels awkward. But what I've really gotten in the habit of is, you know, I'm the kind of person who wants to just solve problems, get things done, go. And you're like that too, Lindsay. Yeah. But what I have forced myself to do in the last couple of years is to say, you know, can I think about that for a minute? Like, I need to think, and don't hang up the call necessarily, but like we can sit here in silence and we're gonna be okay. So yeah. Have you ever had that, Lindsay, where you like just need that silence or need that space?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I am deeply uncomfortable with long pauses, and I noticed this in a meeting I was in as an advisor to a firm a week or two ago, where the leader of the call kept filling the space because it's uncomfortable, right? Like it's kind of the natural reaction. And you know, when questions are asked, certain people will speak up immediately, but many won't because they need a second to process. And if we fill the space, it doesn't allow for the folks that need a couple of minutes or even a few seconds to respond. And so I think this space can be really valuable. And when you're talking about processing, you know, I was thinking about a call I was in earlier this week with a client, and we were kind of discussing in a fast-paced way, like, okay, what are we going to do to make this better, this better, this better? And I paused for a moment and I was like, I really want to zoom out and just like sort of go back to the why. Like, why are we doing this? And it actually was really great because the client was able to say to me very clearly, like, I love this, this, and this about what we're doing, like the ultimate goal, right? Like, and I'm clear on that goal. And I said to the client, I was like, I'm so glad to hear you say that you really truly know what you want. So vamos, you know, like, let's go, away we go. But like, I wanted to take a pause and be like, I just want to make sure we're headed in the right direction. Yeah. And I think even that we can get away from sometimes.
Oh yeah. And you know, one strategy I use, and I actually I do it in these strategic alignment sessions, is I say like day one is not making any decisions and not problem solving. That's day one is simply brainstorming and talking. And you know, like someone was like, I'm sorry, I got to go back to this. And I'm like, we're not apologizing either. Like we're having an entire day, 12 hours of just thinking. And then tomorrow when we come back, we're ready to make decisions. And so I think you know, you don't have to do that. You don't always have to have a 12-hour brainstorm, but you can have a meeting that is like, hey, this is just brainstorming. And then the next meeting we decide. And even if those meetings are sometimes within the same close period of time, the same day even. But I think when you're making consequential decisions, especially as a leader, and especially like are these things connected to your vision, you've got to give yourself space to think, to process, to gather new information. And you know, we all, you know, what the sort of analogy I'll use it is like, you know, when you go over to someone's house and you're just like, hey, how are you? Like, even though you're in their space and you're like, they're your friend or you're comfortable, like you typically don't start going into the harder conversations until later. Yeah. Right. Like you go to someone's house and you're like, oh yeah. And then and then it gets deeper. Lindsay and I were at a breakfast or I guess like a kind of a lunch hour event for a couple of hours with a bunch of women in Austin. And everyone arrived and everyone's getting their food and it's all the chit chat. But then as we sat together for like kind of going into hour, 2, hour 1 was chit chat. How's everyone? How's the kids? Yeah. But then hour 2 is where it's like, oh, now we're ready. And it does take us, even people like you and I, Lindsay, who are chatty and extroverted, like to get to the deeper does require time. And so I think we have to really highlight when we need the deeper, and then we have to give that space. And not everything needs the deeper and not everything can have the deeper in reality. But there's a lot that needs it and deserves it. And so you have to figure out how to create that space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking as you were talking about brainstorming specifically, I think another challenge is really working to create space to take risks and to say things that aren't perfect.
Yeah.
A lot of people won't put forth an idea because there's a couple things that are not great about it. But, I think you and I, like one of our favorite phrases is to say to each other is like, I don't love this for a couple reasons, but I'm going to say it anyway. Right. And we pose an idea. Then what happens is like, if I have something in my head, it comes out and maybe you can find the solution or the tweak that solves for X, Y, Z, and I think that not only just creating the time, but creating the psychological safety and this feeling of like, we're going to brainstorm. There are no wrong answers. This is really like brain vomit, we're dumping it all out there.
Yeah.
We'll start to make sense of it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So then, I know we've talked about a few things about how we can create this space, but do you have anything else you want to add about sort of tactics that you use or strategies to create this kind of space that's meaningful?
Yeah. So I think I would look at it as there's physical space, and sometimes you need to rethink your physical space that you're going to have certain conversations in. Move them outside, move them out of the office, do something different. So that's the physical. Then there's the timing. Actually give space, meaning time. So give extra time. If you know you've got to get into something, allow people to ease into it, but also set expectations up front. Like, hey, we need to have this really in-depth conversation. So everyone needs to come, and you got to set up parameters, like turn your phones off. Don't be tabbing around. Like I'll tell people that all the time, like, let's just close our tabs, put your phones down, sit back. I'll make people sit get away from your desk. So you can't type, right? And you can't do all your other stuff. So there's those tactics. I also think it's helpful because all of us process differently. I say, Lindsay, you and I process real fast. Like we were trial lawyers, boom. Not everyone is like us. So I try to send out some like prompting questions ahead of an in-depth conversation to give people some time. Like, hey, we're going to be talking about this. Start gathering your thoughts and then let's get together. And that just gives people a little heads up. Those are a couple of tips. And I also think there are things that you should build into your cadence as a person, a leader, but also in your organizations. Psychological safety is a big piece of it, but how you do that is by saying like, hey, we're going to have these sessions where no idea is bad and we're going to explore it. Or you can say, I really want everyone's perspective, so I'm going to go around the room and get everybody's perspective.
Everybody's got to
everyone has to answer. And that's but you just have to create that environment. And I think that just takes a lot of intentionality. How about you?
Yeah. I really liked what you said. When I think about sort of creating space for connection, a lot of what I think about is how to build connection on remote teams, since that was sort of, so, when I was CEO of Ascena, like everyone is remote. We all live in different spaces. We're together like maybe once or twice a year in the same physical space. And so a couple of things that we did were, one, we started this question of the day, or QOTD. And I had a list that I got from Caitlin Goldfinch, who was one of our guests on the podcast she was on in December. But it's like such random things, like what is one food that you hate? And it's funny because we've had on our team historically 2 members that are from Argentina. And apparently there's this cartoon character, Mafalda, who hates soup. And, it's such a weird fact, and like to learn all about this character, but it really like helped me get to know them in a way that I wouldn't have otherwise, you know, and some can be deeper, right? Like, what was your greatest accomplishment in high school? Or, you know, one of them was like, what was your first job? And I mean, the stories from that are fun, you know. Question of the day. And then the other thing we did is we had a chat thread that was all personal. We called it the lighter side. So people could like, so that it wasn't pinging all the time, you know, they could turn off notifications or go and check it. But that's where we had like the cat pictures or the kid pictures or, you know, like something silly. And so that was a way to really build community and connection in a remote team.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes, you know, all of this, whether you're remote or in person, takes attention to detail. It takes thoughtfulness. But I would really encourage you, you know, like maybe the challenge for this week is to think about, you know, a conversation that you want to be more intentional about and create a different space for that. A space that isn't rushed, doesn't feel transactional, it's not surface level. And maybe it's some of these prompt questions if you're all virtual. Maybe it is, you know, have everybody in the chat put like a picture from the weekend, you know, just something. It can be that. But then if you need to go deeper, like say, hey, we really got to talk about this conflict, or we really got to talk about this pressing budget issue that's actually really scary. And we're going to talk about it. So you know, everybody come prepared, but maybe make it fun. Like when I do these in-person sessions, I make everyone wear comfortable clothes. So they have to wear like gym clothes. And the point is like, we're going to talk about hard stuff. So be comfortable. And so think about that space. That would be my challenge for y'all this week, is to think about how you could do that a little bit differently each week. And again, not for every meeting, because there's just no way, but some meetings, it's really important.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that a ton. Awesome.
Awesome. Well, we'll let you have some space back and some time. But
some space, although I know we both have busy days. But I'm glad to talk through this. I know it will be a continuing conversation, and I'm excited to see, you know, where it heads. And if those of you watching have, you know, tactics that you use, strategies that you use, we'd love to hear them, because I feel like this is a place where all of us can always get better and stronger at building connections. So
definitely.
We'll see you next week.
All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye.